This is the peak episode of the offseason, the one that will truly put you over the top to beat your league mates in fantasy football this year. 9 league winners for the 2025 fantasy football season. We break them down and tell you why we think they can make you a champion this year. And fellas, we have each brought 3 players to the table. Cameron, we'll start with you. I'm intrigued to hear your case on why you think Jaylen Waddle could be a league winner for managers this year.
For sure. And I just want to preface, for me, the names I'm bringing out today, it gets a lot grosser from here. So if you're hesitant on Jaylen Waddle,
this is already pretty gross if you're asking me.
Don't listen to me the rest of the time, but walk with me as I talk you back in to Jaylen Waddle top 10 upside. So over the past 3 years, I'm taking the average for Tua. Obviously has missed multiple games each season, but he's averaging 33 attempts a game, 269 passing yards a game, and 1.8 touchdowns. That's a 17-game pace for 570 attempts, 4,577 yards, and 30 passing touchdowns. That's a pretty good season from Tua Tagovailoa. That's what this team looks like when he's actually on the field. I'm a believer that he's going to be back on the field. I know, obviously, it's one hit and Tua's out. I understand all that. But I'm of the belief that he's going to stay upright this year. They're going to work on getting the ball out. Also this season, they no more Jonnu Smith, who had 88 receptions on 111 targets for 884 yards and 8 touchdowns last year. That's a big chunk of the passing game gone. I'm not really looking at 2024 for Jaylen Waddle because Tua missed so much time, because it was fluky for both him and Tyreek. But in his 2023 season, we also kind of looked at that as disappointing. I think a lot of people did. He was still the wide receiver 23 in points per game, which is ahead of where he's going right now in drafts, considerably at the wide receiver 30 over on Underdog. And he was still in a 17-game pace for 88 receptions, 1,200 yards, but only 5 touchdowns. And a big reason for that dip in touchdowns that year was the Dolphins had 27 rushing touchdowns. I don't think the Dolphins are going to repeat 27 rushing touchdowns, no matter how good we think Devon Achane is going to be. If he would have played all 17 games that season and, instead of scoring 4 touchdowns, he scores 7. I understand it's a lot of ifs, if this, if that. He would have been a top 10 wide receiver on the season. The narrative would be completely different on Jaylen Waddle. I'm not saying we should count that season as a top 10 season. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying he was close enough to having the narrative change completely, where last year was just kind of a fluke and we're still drafting him as a top 20 guy. Now, we take everything that I've kind of mentioned, the fact that, hey, I think this offense is going to be back on track. When they are on track, they're good. Jaylen Waddle's good. He has plenty of opportunities. Now you add in all the Tyreek drama, where it sounds like every comment coming out of Tua and Mike McDaniel's mouth is, we can't stand this guy. And every comment coming out of Tyreek's mouth is, hey, we got to be better. We got to show up on time. And then he misses practices the next day. Now Achane's got a calf injury. Might be nothing, but it might not. So for me, when I'm looking at Jaylen Waddle, I'm looking at a guy at the very least in a bad season in 2023 is a top 24 guy in points per game. And at best, he's a top 10 guy that we've already seen it happen multiple times.
Can I add another what if to your list?
Course.
What if the Dolphins are just dog water again this year? That's what I'm terrified of when I look at the Miami Dolphins again. If they're without their explosive playmakers, sure, you can make the case that, okay, well, then Jaylen Waddle can PPR his way like he did in his rookie season, right? But I am just terrified. Like, what we saw of the Miami Dolphins last year is what we're going to get again this year. I don't know where you stand. I think when the Jonnu Smith trade happened, I saw this with a little bit more rose-colored glasses. I think since I have taken those off, and I have since come to the conclusion that, hey, I'm okay with Devon Achane as long as he's healthy. That's a whole other conversation. We won't talk about him, but I'm just not convinced like Jaylen Waddle is this massive winner out of it, because I'm just terrified the Dolphins just still stink along the offensive line and they don't make that many improvements going into the 2025 season.
I think all of those things can be true to a certain extent, where the Jonnu Smith trade is a benefit to Jaylen Waddle. It's less mouths to feed, because if it's not Tyreek and it's not Achane, it's got to be Jaylen Waddle. And I don't think that this team is going to suddenly put like Nick Westbrook-Akine or Malik Washington or even Darren Waller like as the next guy up in this offense. So you kind of said it, like Jaylen Waddle what might just be like the clearest path that he's had over the last like 2 years to being a league winner, at least returning value on his draft position right now. I'm also of the belief that, like, again, Jaylen Waddle kind of has to step up as a playmaker for this team this year, because I don't think we're going to be getting the same Tyreek this year. I thought we saw the start of the decline last year. And if Achan's not going to be healthy, at least to start the season, like, Jaylen Waddle has to step up here. So again, in some weird roundabout way, like, Jaylen Waddle has probably the clearest path that he's had to production in the last couple of years. But you bring up the good point too, of just like, this Miami offense is so volatile in how, they will end up come year's end. So if there is a Dolphin pass catcher that I want to bet on, it is Jaylen Waddle over Tyreek Hill. But I completely understand for those people that are like, actually, I want nothing to do with this Miami offense because I can't get a feel for what it's actually going to be like this year. I totally understand.
I think that's the camp. I shouldn't say I don't understand what the Dolphins offense is going to be this year, but I think I've started to fall more into the camp of, boy, I'm terrified the floor just falls from underneath this offense again, and I'm stuck holding the bag on Jaylen Waddle. So at one point, I was very bullish on trying to draft a Jaylen Waddle. Tyreek obviously got steamed up to wide receiver 12, and even at that price point, I'm like, having a little bit of a hard time stomaching that. But I feel like people are very opinionated about what the Miami Dolphins could be this year. So I want to hear from you all down in the comments below. Is Jaylen Waddle this potential league winner? Does he have that upside still? Or do you maybe fall more into my camp of, hey, the Dolphins might just be dog water again this year, and I have no clue what I'm actually going to get from any of these Dolphins assets outside of potentially Devon Achane. Before we transition players, though, I want to share a goal that we have with our followers. It's a goal that I don't even know if I've shared with you both. I want to hit 5,000 subs by the start of the season over on our YouTube channel. Now, that's a big ask because we're 480 something followers away. But you can help us make that happen by hitting that subscribe button and turning on that notification bell as well, so you know when all of our newest content is up. Our hope in creating content is, yes, to provide you league winning tips, league winning players like this, but all three of us bonded over fantasy football during our college days. That's why we started doing this now. We want to remind you of the fun and camaraderie that fantasy football truly can bring. So we appreciate if you join with us on our journey. Ty, I'll kick it back to you. Chase Brown, correct me if I'm wrong. He's probably your most drafted player over on Underdog right now. You don't need to fact check me for sure, but all I know is that you absolutely love Chase Brown this year. He's a very, very, very popular player to have chosen as a league winner this year for people. But go ahead. You can remind people as to why.
Yeah, so he's actually my top running back on Underdog right now. Because my number one guy, I'm actually going to be talking about a little bit later, so stay tuned for that one. But I don't know what else I can really talk about when it comes to Chase Brown that I haven't talked about before, that you haven't heard someone else say before. But like, this is, to me, as clear as it gets for a guy that can really be a league winner, because I don't want to say the only way is up, but from what we got last year and what we've been hearing and what we're supposed to get in terms from a volume and touch perspective, like, we should be going upwards, right? From week 6 on last year, he was the running back 2 in usage. And I don't care if he was inefficient, because that's not the point when it comes to Chase Brown. The point is the usage and the volume. He ended up being 4th in total touches and 4th in touches inside the red zone from week 6 on last year. So he is a big part of this Bengals offense, even with a T. Higgins, even with a Jamar Chase. This guy is a big piece of this offense. We've said that Joe Mixon's highest finish as a Bengal was the running back 5 in points per game. So, can we ask the question, can he be the overall running back 1? I don't think so, because we're talking about some really, really talented backs and really good offenses at that point. But if Chase Brown matches Joe Mixon's best finish as the running back 5 in points per game, Chase Brown becomes a league winner, because he goes as a running back 11 in your home drafts right now. So being one of the top players at the position, if he hits this ceiling, we see a jump in touchdowns or efficiency goes up, it's all good news then for Chase Brown, because again, you know what you're going to get from a volume standpoint.
This feels like a very easy checklist to go through if you're asking me. Does Chase Brown get the volume? Yes, he'll be getting the volume this year. Does he have any competition to threaten the volume? If you really want to count Taj Brooks, but that hype train has kind of left the station, it feels like, already. Then you get into, is the coach speak there? Does the coaching staff believe in him? Check, yes. Is he on a high-powered offense? Check, yes. Like, this is a pretty easy checklist to complete, Cameron, and I don't this feels like one that people won't have many gripes about.
Yeah, the only worry is just how long can he maintain the level that they've had him at. I mean, 24 touches a game is, like Ty said, it's elite level stuff. He's, just over 200 pounds as a back. I mean, he's not little by any means, but he's not a big back at the same time, right? He's not one of your bruisers. And we've only seen that little part of the season where he's been able to maintain that workload. That's the only concern, because as long as he can maintain it, he has to be, like Ty said, he has to be by default a top 10 fantasy running back at worst, just because he's involved in the passing game. He gets rushing attempts. He scores touchdowns for this team. He's on a great offense, like you guys said. So he checks all the boxes. It's just, can he maintain the workload for the entire season? Which obviously is the question for every running back. I just feel like there's a little bit more of that question mark with Chase Brown, which is why I'm a little more cautious. I'm not pessimistic, just a little more cautious on the amount of Chase Brown I'm drafting.
I'm just curious to see how the backup shake out here between Brooks, how Samaje Perine gets in. It seems like Samaje Perine's going to get in on like third and distance, which, guess what? Not much is going to happen for Chase Brown on third and distance anyways. They're not running the football. Maybe they do a screen every once in a while, but if you really got to siphon a few screens away from Chase Brown, I think we're going to survive. I think we'll be okay on Chase Brown, right? So I think Ty laid out the pretty even keel case there as to why Chase Brown could absolutely return top 5 value at the position this year, outperforming, the Derrick Henrys, the Ashton Genties, the Devon Achans of the world who are currently going ahead of him. The next player I want to talk about is someone who I have frankly been able to shut up about all offseason. We talked about him recently as well, but Kenneth Walker. All the people have been able to talk about this preseason, though, is how great the Seahawks run game looks under Clint Kubiak. 119 rushing yards in the first quarter. I understand it's a preseason game, but 119 rushing yards in the first quarter against the Chiefs in week 2 of the preseason. Flat out ridiculous. Holes everywhere. Clint Kubiak was finding a ton of success in this outside zone run scheme, right? It's what we've been harping. I've been harping all off season long. Ken Walker thrives in this outside zone scheme, right? He averages 4.5 yards per carry on wide zone runs, which is 13% better than all of his other runs. The biggest question mark I had coming into the season, though, about Ken Walker was how good was the Seattle Seahawks, offensive line going to look. Gray Zabel, he's looked the part so far in preseason. I also don't think we can overstate how important it is that they're getting Charles Cross back on the offensive line as well. And I think, Cameron, the last time we talked about Ken Walker, I mentioned he's my Keenan Allen for you, right? Once upon a time, we talked about Keenan Allen being this injury-prone guy, and people would just keep labeling injury-prone. Then all of a sudden, it took Keenan Allen to have one fully healthy season, and people are like, wait, Keenan Allen is really good at this football thing. He can provide me fantasy points. And that's where I'm at with Ken Walker. It's only been 3 years. I totally understand he hasn't played a fully healthy season yet, but man, he puts one together in this zone scheme by Clint Kubiak in an improved offensive line. Brother, I just don't want people to miss out, because I'm not missing out. Ken Walker is going to be one of my most highest drafted running backs come season's end. To me, if your biggest concern is the injury, then I need you to back that up by taking Zach Charbonnet in literally every single draft you're leaving this year. Because I believe in the talent of Zach Charbonnet, but if you don't believe in the health of Ken Walker, Zach Charbonnet is going to be your guy who's going to thrive in this system. So I love Ken Walker this year. I have him ranked as top 13 running back. I could very easily see him returning top 10 value this year.
I see the path. All right. I see the path. My issue, and it's not the injury. You made a claim that I can now not refute the injury by calling him your Keenan Allen. So I will stay away from that. But my concern is Zach Charbonnet, who, all the rumors coming out, Lucas, he stole the starting job in that preseason game, looking that good. But my
so not true.
My concern is not that he's going to steal the starting job.
Not true.
It's the concern is that they're going to use him enough that it's going to take away from Ken Walker's top 10 upside. Kind of how we're fearing right now with Breece Hall and Braylon Allen.
Oh,
Except I think Zach Charbonnet is a better running back than Braylon Allen is. And so I still think he can return on value at where he's taken because of, Clint Kubiak's going to want to establish a run. He's going to hit some home runs with Kenneth Walker. But it's how much does Zach Charbonnet fit into that? How much are they going to use? Because he is that big bruiser, right? He's going to take some touchdowns away, in goal line situations. So that's my concern. And then it's how does the receiving work?
yes,
Balance
that's
out.
the other thing.
Because Zach Charbonnet last year had 52 targets. I understand he played 17 games, and Walker also had 53 targets in only 11 games. So I understand that. But is that something that's going to stay consistent with, adding Cooper Kupp, who's going to play around the line a little bit now? So that's my biggest concern with Kenneth Walker. That's why I'm not quite as bullish, is I am more concerned about Zach Charbonnet.
The receiving game is the other thing you could totally knock Ken Walker for, because
Mhm.
Geno Smith loved to target the running back position last year. It was a huge benefit for Ken Walker. It was a huge boost in terms of PPR formats to his value. To me, I just look at this offense and I'm like, it's JSN and Ken Walker, who are the two most explosive players. Get the football into their freaking hands and let them get to work. That's kind of how I see it. Clint Kubiak will do his thing. We saw him succeed with Alvin Kamara last year. Could we get a little bit of that? Not the same level of receiving work to Ken Walker, obviously, but it sparks hope that there can still be that receiving value in Ken Walker's game. Where do you stand, Ty? Are you kind of in the middle of us, where I'm like extremely bullish and Cam's on the more bearish side? Are you going to shoot right down the middle here? Where are you at?
I find myself more leaning towards your side, but I also understand the Zach Charbonnet side of this, because you can't just sit there and say that Zach Charbonnet isn't a talented running back in this backfield. No. But we do need to keep it up. We need to keep it a buck here. We have always said that Zach Charbonnet can be enough of a thorn in Ken Walker's side to kind of limit the upside. When they're both healthy, Zach Charbonnet averages less than 10 touches a game. Like he's barely a factor when Ken Walker is healthy. Now, it does become a different equation than when you do have a 90% Ken Walker versus 100% Ken Walker. But I think that the thing that I would say is that if you were not in on Ken Walker because of the injury, be in on Zach Charbonnet, like you said. But there is the potential too, just in this new offense, that you can get the most out of both of these running backs. So both can actually have some standalone value. I would just argue that it's going to be Ken Walker that has the true upside. Unfortunate, you have to pay, higher capital on Ken Walker than you do on Charbonnet. But because of the skill set that he has, his ability, his vision, or I should say his ability to make guys miss in a phone booth, and his vision for the outside zones, and the receiving chops. Like, yes, Lucas brought it up. Like, yeah, sneaky good. So I find myself being more and more in, because he's going right around this spot. Like in best ball, he's running back 17. He's running back 16 in your home leagues. I still think that's a fair price. Yeah. I find myself taking Ken Walker more times than not. When there isn't a Travion or a receiver right around him.
So there's not a more juicy name in front of him, right?
Right. But you can't just, I think my point is really, you can't just sit there and ignore all of the positive noise that's coming out of Seattle right now about what Clint Kubiak is doing for the run game here.
Well, speaking of Clint Kubiak, this is actually a really good transition, because let's talk about the running back who benefited from Clint Kubiak's system last year. Cameron, you've got Alvin Kamara back up on your list here as a league winner for this year. I'll start by making my first comment, that I want to hear your case. I think Alvin Kamara is a good value. I don't know if he qualifies to me as a league winner, but go ahead, make your case, because I think I might know where you're going with this, but I want to hear your thoughts.
And I know what the viewers are thinking. You, gross. Why are you talking about a 30-year-old running back who plays for the Saints? You hit like every check mark of what not to talk about. But we're going to talk about him anyways. Who's their quarterback? I don't care. What's the upside of taking him? Let me fill you in on that. So we're talking about a guy who has finished at his worst season as running back 15 in points per game. If you didn't remember last year, he was running back 6 in points per game. He was running back 6. And let me tell you, their quarterback situation wasn't exactly great last season. He is still their best weapon. And I say that confidently, mainly because he doesn't have to rely on Spencer Rattler or Tyler Shuck throwing it more than 6 yards down the field. You can say Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed are, more explosive or whatnot, but they're at the mercy of Tyler Shuck and Spencer Rattler, whereas Alvin Kamara is going to do his thing no matter who the quarterback is. And he was running back 6 last year while only scoring 8 total touchdowns in 14 games. So I don't want to hear, oh my goodness, he can't have this upside because of touchdowns. He didn't have touchdowns last year as running back 6. You have no Taysom Hill now this season who's going to siphon, touchdowns. And he did all that while leading the NFL in targets in only 14 games and only seeing 4.2 yards per carry. Now you might say, they took Devin Neal in the 6th round. Well, he hasn't played at all because he's been injured. Kendra Miller is averaging 3 yards per carry this preseason. And Velus Jones Jr. has been their best running back in preseason. That's his competition as a 25-year-old rookie wide receiver. Okay, so we're not concerned about Alvin Kamara losing snaps there. Oh, and now he gets Kellen Moore, who has produced high-performing offenses after high-performing offenses that heavily use the running backs. Now, we do have to put in the caveat. They were a lot more talented than the Saints team, right? Both the Eagles and Cowboys team had a lot more firepower. But he's going to continue to use Alvin Kamara in the way that he's being used. And whether he wants to or not, Mickey Loomis decided, hey, we're going to dump another $19 million guaranteed into this guy. So you have to use him now, whether you like it or not. So I don't know. I understand that it's gross. We're not going to like it. But you want to talk about volume with Chase Brown? I understand he might not have the touchdowns, but he's going to have the volume to get him there. And he can get there, like I said, last season with only 8 touchdowns in 14 games.
I think the case you have to make for Alvin Kamara being a league winner this year is that it has to come in full PPR formats. Yes, this is an improving offensive line. I don't think this offense is necessarily good enough to get him close to the end zone to, like you said, score touchdowns. Not that it totally matters. Only 8 total last season. It's been by touchdowns for Alvin Kamara in previous seasons, but Lord knows the Saints offense isn't good enough to make that happen this year. I think it's got to come in full PPR formats, and you really got to be a believer in Kellen Moore to think that Alvin Kamara can come back RB19 off the board on underdog right now. Goes earlier in your home leagues, but to propel himself back to that like top 7 status where we're kind of used to Alvin Kamara being, I'm just not sure all the chips will fall that way. Can you get to top 15? Absolutely. I think I have Alvin Kamara as my running back 14 currently. Could I see him getting to 12? Potentially. There's a lot of fun young running backs flooding the league though right now where I'm maybe a little bit hesitant to push Kamara that high, but to me, I'd rather bet on younger, more exciting players in better offenses than the New Orleans Saints. Again, I like Kamara as a value, Ty. I'll kick it over to you here before I talk myself in circles. Is Kamara more of a value, or does he have this league-winning upside for you?
I find it to be somewhere in between, because I think when you look at the player and his skill set, there is a path to pushing towards being a league winner, because again, he catches a ton of passes, and that's the cheat code when you look at the running back position. I feel like it was a tale of 4 seasons for Kamara last year, because he had one part of the season with Derek Carr, then with Spencer Rattler, then with Derek Carr again, and then back to Spencer Rattler. And he was the running back 3 in points per game with Derek Carr, but he was the running back 19 in points per game with Spencer Rattler. So can you say that the floor is lower than usual when you don't necessarily have a veteran or competent or experienced quarterback with him? I think you can make that argument, but what ultimately saves him is that he does have a Kellen Moore running the show now, where he will be able to be relied upon still, because you have to have the quarterback. One of these quarterbacks, Tyler Shuck, Spencer Rattler, has to have a best friend in this offense, and it's probably going to be Alvin Kamara. For as much as I like Chris Olave, the player, Alvin Kamara is still really this team's offense. So again, I sit somewhere in between of he can push to be a league winner because of the skill set that he has and the fact that this team has to get him the ball. To not give Alvin Kamara the ball you're almost committing to a 2-win season.
At some point, you just have to look at the best players in this offense, and even at 30 years old, like Alvin Kamara should get the ball fed to him. And if Kellen Moore is able to make some sort of magic work here with Spencer Rattler likely starting the season, I think Spencer Rattler ends up starting the season and Tyler Shuck probably comes in. I don't even want to put a number on it because it could be 2 games. It could be 8 games. I don't really know. I think Shuck gets in at some point, but the ball has to get to Alvin Kamara at some point because he's the one who can make plays happen for this team. Fellas, let's take a quick break. We have 5 more league winners coming up after we hear from our friends over at Underdog. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog, home of Best Ball Mania 6. There are $15 million in prizes up for grabs, with $2 million going to first place and another $1 million going to second place. Entering is super easy. You join a draft with 11 other people, select your team, and Underdog will automatically generate your highest scoring lineup each week. Essentially, you get all the fun of drafting with zero stress of making the wrong decision on who to start. Underdog hosts a variety of other contests as well, ranging from $3 entries to $500 entries, so there's something for everybody's pocketbook. If you're not on Underdog yet, use the code FELLAS when you sign up because they'll give you up to $1,000 in bonus credits to play with, and we'll give you our 2025 draft guide for free. Again, that's code FELLAS over on Underdog. Now let's get you back to the rest of the show. All right, fellas, let's keep on chugging along here. Over the back half, there are some repeats on players we've talked about before on our channel. So again, this is why subscribe, turn on the notification bell, so you know when all of our newest content is out so you don't miss any content. But go back, check out a lot of our previous videos if you want to hear more in-depth analysis on some of these players. Tetairoa McMillian, we just talked about him recently as a breakout wide receiver you need to be drafting. Literally, just last week we talked about him. But you see him like even one step further, not just a breakout, but a breakout to be a league winner in year 1.
I do. There's a ton of data that says it's wise to bet on these high NFL draft capital receivers, and Tet McMillian is really no exception to this. We've mentioned the stat from our friend Ron Stewart when it comes to rookie receivers and rookie running backs to the second half of the year, but since 2010, there have been 21 receivers to post 16 plus fantasy points per game from week 9 on. And the wide receiver 15 in points per game last year was Rashee Rice at 16.2. He goes as the wide receiver 27 right now. He has the talent, the ascending offense. Maybe I'm a little more bullish on Carolina's offense than most people, but you have to admit that this Carolina offense is kind of primed to take a step forward. And Tet McMillian has minimal competition to not only perform at that wide receiver 27 price that you're drafting him at, but eventually jump into being one of those top 15 guys on a per game basis in the second half of the year. And we've seen glimpses of Tet being the focal point of this passing game already. And when Bryce Young and T-Mac get on the same page, which is sooner rather than later, T-Mac is going to be an absolute difference maker in fantasy.
I think the biggest takeaway I'm coming out of this preseason for with the Carolina Panthers, yes, Tetairoa McMillian is very, very, very good at the football, but I'm just like, I'm becoming less impressed with Xavier Legette. I mean, not just because he can't keep his hands to himself, but like, man, he spent a first round pick on him last year. I just haven't been, he's a good football player, but I haven't been overly impressed with him in the preseason. Jalen Coker looks good. Sure, you got Adam Thielen there, but it's just like, man, when I look at the rest of the room, there's talent there, but then there's Tetairoa McMillian, who's king of the hill in terms of that talent. That's kind of been my biggest takeaway of, I'm actually probably more bullish on a guy like Xavier Legette than I probably should be, when I'm actually far more excited about the prospect of Tetairoa McMillian being the wide receiver 1 in this offense, which, Cameron, is kind of what we've been seeing this preseason.
Yeah, if he's as good as we think he is, then he is going to be the best player on this offense, and it will not be close. Right? I mean, that's the talent they have. Where if he's an average, mediocre player, yeah, he's going to kind of get drowned out. But if he is worthy of a top 10 pick, it's going to be pretty clear that he's the alpha pretty quickly in this offense. But my thing with Ted is the same thing that I've said all offseason. It's just going to go as far as Bryce Young's willing to take him.
Yep.
That's the concern I have, is I just don't know if Bryce Young's going to take that next step. If he does take that next step, then 100%, I don't even think it's going to be week 9 on. I think it's going to be very evident very early that this is Tet's. Yeah, this is Tet's wide receiver group, right? And that he is the lead, he's the alpha. So, yeah, I think he's going to be good. I I view him as, I think he could be a value. I don't quite see league winner, but that's just where I'm viewing Tet right now.
6th round of your home leagues is absolutely a smash price tag for me. Currently goes 38th, 38.7 overall over on Underdog. That is at the early start of the 4th round. It gets to be a little rich. You can maybe talk me into it ahead of Mike Evans. Matthew Stafford was back on the practice field. We're recording this on Monday, August 18th, about 5 p.m. Central Time. Matt Stafford was back on the field today, so maybe that's good news for Devontae Adams, right? Like, I can make a case for Tetairoa McMillian ahead of some of these guys, but at some point it feels like we're going to teeter out at the top of his value in best ball formats. But in home leagues, my gosh, as long as you can get Tet McMillian in the 6th round, just keep hitting that draft button, because Ty's right 100%. The outcome for Tetairoa McMillian this year could be a top 12 guy over the back half of the season. And what you get at the start of the season could be good enough to return on his wide receiver 19 price tag on Underdog. But in your home leagues, I don't have the number right in front of me where Tet's going.
27.
But it's smash. You could easily hit that in the first half of the season, give you top 20 wide receiver numbers through the first 6-7 weeks. I want to talk about another first round rookie wide receiver, one that we've talked about to some extent, but as the preseason goes on, the chips just keep falling Matthew Golden's way. And if I can get him basically in your home leagues 4 rounds later than all these other first round wide receivers, than Tetairoa McMillian, than Travis Hunter, then just be my guest, because he might be on the best offense out of all the first round wide receivers this year with the Green Bay Packers. Jaden Reed's currently in a walking boot. Romeo Doubs just returned to practice today on Monday after suffering a back injury last week. I'm not going to pretend that just went away magically. He's probably going to need some time to get back up to speed. But what that's allowed for is Matthew Golden to just get these reps upon reps upon reps with the first team. And I'm also not concerned about Jordan Love having this surgery on like a tendon in his left hand. I can't remember what exactly it is, but it's in his left hand. I know that much. And Josh Norris and Hayden Winks made the joke on their show, right? Like, I'm going to make a bold prediction. Jordan Love isn't going to be throwing with his left hand this year. So I'm just not concerned when Matthew Golden fits such a need in this offense that I've already laid out. Is he can hit you on the go route on a play action. He can hit you on a deep crossing dig route on play action as well. You got Josh Jacobs, the running back, there to set all that up. If he's going to be the clear-cut one here, the buzz out of camp has been that he's living up to the hype of a first-round pick, and he's the real deal. He's the guy in this wide receiver room. Like, probably one of the easiest picks at price right now in the 9th round of your drafts, who could return, potentially top 20 value in this Green Bay Packers offense if this Matt LaFleur offense is as good as we know it can be.
Yeah, my concern is we saw in
Stop with your concerns. I can only have concerns about your takes. You can't have them about mine.
You guys have just picked guys that I'm just like, except for these next two you have, that I'm just like, I don't know if I trust them completely. So I think what we've learned from this is we shouldn't trust you guys, and you should trust me. And
the guy who chose Jaylen Waddle on a terrible offense last year.
Dolphins.
Hey now. Alvin Kamara, running back 6 in points per game. That's all I'm gonna say. Tua Tagovailoa, week 8 to 16. He was top 5 in all passing stats. So let's calm down a little bit before we look over the plank in our own eye over there. All right. But but anyways, Jordan Love, we had already seen in 2023, had 4,200 yards, 32 passing touchdowns, and there wasn't a wide receiver one that emerged on that team. That's my concern, is it's just another guy in the shuffle who's a little bit better, right? I think he can outperform his wide receiver 39 spot. I assume he will. I'm drafting him like he will. I just don't think that there's that crazy upside where you're going to be like, he was just such a smash pick here, because I'm just worried that he's just another guy in that shuffle. Like, I personally don't think Matthew Golden has enough, and maybe he will down the road, at least this season, that he's just going to separate himself from the rest of the pack in Green Bay. So
your rebuttal is basically mine about Kamara. If I think he's a value, but can he bring you league winning? And I think that's where we need to kind of not necessarily quantify what we see as a league winner, but how big of a jump in ADP, how big of a jump in performance does it need to be to quantify as a league winner, which maybe that's where I'll kind of put the ball in your court, Ty, of like framing that for us, but also where you stand on Matthew Golden.
Like I love Matthew Golden this year. Like if I had the opportunity, I would have been talking about Matthew Golden, but somebody got there before me. Like when it comes to these high NFL draft capital receivers, we talked about Tet, and it seems like the two popular ones, just because they go outside the first 8 rounds, Matthew Golden and Emeka Egbuka. I like Emeka Egbuka too, but Matthew Golden doesn't have a Mike Evans problem in this offense, right? He doesn't have a guy that he's going to be, I don't want to say second fiddle to, but there is a wide open enough hierarchy in this Packers, passing game where maybe Matt LaFleur, like this is within the realm of possibilities. Maybe Matt LaFleur hasn't really made a guy the guy here in this offense because he doesn't think that any of them can be. But if Matthew Golden can be that, oh, you best believe that Matthew Golden is going to be the focal point of the passing game. So I'm all in. And for the wide receiver 43 price tag that he's going at in your home leagues, you don't even need him to be in your lineup right away to begin the season. You can let everything kind of play out. And then second half of the year, boom, I'm going to take my chances that Matthew Golden is going to step up and emerge as the guy here in Green Bay, that Jaden Reed, Romeo Dobbs, Christian Watson, if he's somehow healthy and being able to run off of another serious knee injury. Like, you get my point. Like, Matthew Golden has an opportunity to step up, emerge, and be the guy here in this Green Bay offense. And if we all think that this Green Bay offense is going to be one of the top units in the league again, you should be in on Matthew Golden then.
I also just expect this offense to pass more this year, similar to the Eagles, right? Like everyone wants to say like, oh, Saquon Barkley regression incoming, right? Like I think it's true. I do think the Eagles definitely pass more this year because I just firmly don't believe they run the ball 70 more times than any other team in the league. But I also believe the same to be true about the Green Bay Packers offense, just because you didn't have a fully healthy Jordan Love last year. You can say that with his left hand, but I'm like, his left hand is very different than a lower extremity injury. Okay. That impacts his mobility, his planting, the actual mechanics. I understand, like, sure, holding on to the football, but like, it's a totally different dynamic to the throwing motion, the throwing elements of the game. So I don't know, man. I just, these are the kind of profiles I want to bet on. I've mentioned I've had this almost like awakening as like a fantasy football analyst of like, I'm kind of done just like betting on safety. Safety is like important, but at this, I just want to take a swing on Matthew Golden when he's the cheapest round one wide receiver. And Ty, you brought up a great point. Emeka Egbuka going as a wide receiver 35 in your home leagues, they're going right around the same range, but you can make the case that the Green Bay Packers actually could be the better offense that have less question marks around them in terms of not losing a Liam Cohen and not, is Chris Godwin going to be ready for week 1? Is he not going to be ready for week 1? I don't know what the deal is. I think the only reason why people are drafting Emeka Egbuka ahead of Matthew Golden is because that was the talent evaluation coming out. Consensus was Emeka Egbuka is the more talented wide receiver and more highly drafted wide receiver than Chris Olave, than Matthew Golden. Excuse me, I was looking at Chris Olave on my screen. I love Matthew Golden. I think he can absolutely turn into a top 20 prospect, top 20 wide receiver this year, which in my mind could give you league winning upside if all chips fall his way. We'll keep it moving here. 3 more players to close out the episode. 2 players that we've talked about quite a bit this offseason. I know I've said that about all these players over the back half. Cameron, I'm with you on this one. Calvin Ridley, currently going as a wide receiver 27. I've mentioned it before. This will be my intro until before I pass it over to you. If you're looking for this year's Terry McLaurin, I know it's not a sexy player to be looking for. It's not a Bucky Irving. It's not a Puka Nacua, but like, hey, Terry McLaurin, top 10 wide receiver last year. It's Calvin Ridley. Hello, just look at the picture here.
Yeah, I mean, if you compare the stats, Calvin Ridley had 3 more targets. He only had 70 less yards, but then obviously he had a dozen less touchdowns because he had Will Levis throwing him the ball. Last season, Calvin Ridley first in air yards, first in unrealized air yards. So that means that they threw the ball deep to him a lot. And that also means that he didn't catch the ball a lot when they threw it deep to him. He was 3rd in deep targets. He was 5th in average depth of target, but he was only 42nd in yards per target. So that means they targeted him down the field It just never actually got to him because he was 97th in catchable target rate. 97th. I mean, that is
only like 4.2 catchable targets per game last year. Or something stupid like that.
Unreal. He's only 59th in red zone targets, and he did all of this while being 7th in win rate against man. So he was getting open. Will Levis just couldn't hit the broadside of the barn. There's a reason he waited so long to have surgery, because he needed an excuse for why he was going to get up beaten out handily by Cam Ward. But Cam Ward is such a clear upgrade over what they had last year. It's not even funny. And I don't even think Cam Ward's necessarily a top 20 quarterback this season. Right? That's just how bad the quarterback situation was last year with Mason Rudolph and Will Levis. Calvin Ridley in this offense is the clear alpha. He's paid like the alpha. There really isn't anyone to challenge him on the depth chart. And if we're looking at him, he really only needs one more target a game to truly challenge for a middle to high end wide receiver 2. And if you think that's crazy, Cortland Sutton last year is the example of what Calvin Ridley could be without seeing, the crazy Terry McLaurin numbers. 81 receptions, 135 targets, 1,081 yards, 8 touchdowns. Calvin Ridley last year had 64 receptions on 120 targets. If he sees one more target a game and his catch rate is something that is like within the realm of being normal,
60% instead of
exactly. If we get 68% or something wild like that, that's just outrageous for, not actually outrageous for a normal wide receiver, but for what we saw from Tennessee last year, Calvin Ridley is just going to keep being more and more of a value. He's going to get the volume. They're going to use him more. And he's actually going to be able to catch the ball because they'll throw it to him. And the last thing I'll say about Ridley is I know he had all that stuff right in the middle of his prime, but I think sometimes we forget that he's actually a really, really good wide receiver. Like there was talks of like Atlanta's going to be just fine with Ridley taking over for Julio Jones, who's one of the best wide receivers we've seen. So that's how good he can be. I'm not saying he's going to be that good anymore. Obviously, things change his career, but he is an extremely talented wide receiver on top of all of this.
The preseason takeaways are Cam Ward is a dog. He looks really good so far. Sure, a couple miscues, right? Welcome to the rookie. Welcome to the NFL rookie, right? Like he's going to have some of those moments. Yep. He's going to force feed Calvin Ridley. Just please look at the rest of this wide receiver room. It's 32-year-old Tyler Lockett. It's 29-year-old Van Jefferson. And then take your pick of whatever rookies
the next
they drafted. Yeah, right. You're Elikayo Minor. You got Xavier Restrepo all the way down the depth chart. Who was the other one? I can't. Chike. I already said Van Jefferson. It's another rookie though they drafted this year. I'm not gonna.
The guy from Florida.
Yes,
Chimike Dire.
Thank you. There it is. I'm like, it's not worth digging up his name, but when you look at the wide receiver room, and that's Calvin Ridley's competition with a very, very competent Cam Ward throwing him the football. Fireworks could absolutely happen this year. Could we accidentally stumble into like a Calvin Ridley top 15, top 12 season? Hey, look, if we're painting best case scenario here, I absolutely think that's possible. Ty, I'm just going to pivot over to you so we don't mince too many more words on Calvin Ridley, but I'm glad somebody else is talking about him. I didn't pick him for this episode because I've already talked enough about him, but hello, Rome Odunze is on your screen again. He's a part of this program once again. In case you all managed to forget within the last week and a half since we've talked about Rome Odunze. Go ahead. I'm going to sit back. I'm not going to say anything, and I'll just save all my thoughts for my final player. You can go ahead and talk about Rome Odunze.
Yeah, my number one drafted player in all of my underdog drafts.
Mine too.
Yeah. Now here's the thing. We're talking about a guy that was outside the top 50 in points per game and target share and yards per route run among a lot of other stats. So it's not really a great starting point to calling Rome a league winner. But the thing is, he doesn't necessarily need to be a top 12 guy for me in my mind to be a league winner. If he can be a wide receiver 2 for your team, it's a league winner. Because when you just look at drafts right now, Rome Odunze, wide receiver 33 in your home leagues, he goes in the 7th round. Devonta Smith, who is averaged as the wide receiver 24 in your home leagues, goes in the 5th round. There's a 2-round difference between the wide receiver 24, the bottom end of the wide receiver 2s, and where Rome Odunze goes. So if Rome Odunze can crack the top 20 or, crack into being a wide receiver 2, it's an instant value that that not many other people are going to be getting in the 7th, maybe even later of your rounds. Now, the hit rate isn't great for guys that have some of those stats, again, being outside the top 50 in points per game, all that stuff. But the reason why I'm willing to take the chance is because, again, the cost is still relatively cheap, where if he doesn't hit, it doesn't wipe you out. Second is the talent. This dude is a man coverage, press coverage beater, and that's what this offense needs. That's what Caleb needs. Plus, you take in the red zone threat that he has because he is such a big target, and his contested catch ability that some people think isn't very good. Maybe look at the stats and just go, oh, wait a second. Like Rome Odunze can actually reel in a ton of contested targets.
Yes.
And third, the situation and the ambiguity of this receiving hierarchy, I'll call it. I think the one thing that people haven't said, but have indirectly said, is that Ben Johnson is hitting refresh on how the targets are going to be structured in this offense. And with the talent that Rome Odunze has, I'm going to bank on improvement going into year 2. I'm willing to take the chance on Rome.
I mean, I won't add anything more because it's all that I've said about Rome Odunze. I just think he's the most complete wide receiver for Ben Johnson to utilize. I'm getting a little bit more steamy on Luther Burden after what I've seen in the preseason. Starting to come up a little bit for me. Colston Loveland has been starting to come up a bit for me. So I don't know if I'm like as bullish on Rome potentially being this top 15 breakout as I once was, but wide receiver 34, 7th round of your home leagues, mid 7th round of your home leagues, he's going to be returning mid 4th round value. I mean, there's no question in my mind that I think he can get to that point. So I just want to attack this ambiguity. I just know who I'm not attacking in this ambiguity. It's DJ Moore, because he's the one who's like the worst vibes out of the bunch, yet you have to pay the most expensive price tag for him. So that's the easiest skip on DJ Moore for me. Instead, give me the guy who was a top 10 pick last year, who was in Tetairoa McMillian's shoes in terms of draft capital last year, now gets a competent offense and improving Caleb Williams, competent head coach. You can keep stacking up the chips in Rome's favor there. It just depends on how much you think Luther Burden and Colston Loveland are going to get involved as Ben Johnson's hand-picked offensive assets in the NFL draft this year. Last player here, fellas. Haven't talked about good old Dak Prescott in a minute, but
you just said you weren't going to add anything and then talk for 2.5 minutes and don't even give me an opportunity on Rome. What this crap?
Go ahead.
Well, that's how I felt about Calvin Ridley. So
I don't even care.
I'm trying to keep it moving. I'm just trying to keep it moving.
I'm just making fun of you.
We'll go back to
no.
Go ahead, Ty. Talk about Calvin Ridley now.
Because you said I'm not going to add anything, and your love for Rome Odunze showed through.
It showed through at the end.
The only thing I'll add real quick on Rome is just JJ Zachariason put out a great tweet. No, I just want to say this one thing. And then I'm done.
No. But the one thing I will add.
I will add.
He put out a great tweet of, just because he had an Amon-Ra in his last offense does not mean that there's an Amon-Ra role in every offense he's going to have.
A great tweet.
Yeah. So don't just expect, who's going to be in the Amon-Ra role. There is none, right? It's a new set of players. He's going to get the targets out. That's all I wanted to say. And I just want to be able to take a shot at you, Lucas. That's all I was looking for.
Understandably, I took a shot at you earlier. Fair game. All is fair game. I shot back at you earlier this show. Good old Dak Prescott, all right? Look, I just firmly believe this offense is going to be top 12 in pass play rate for the 3rd straight year. And I'm really not going to be surprised if it's actually top 5, because you look at the totality of the offseason for the Dallas Cowboys. You trade for George Pickens to elevate this passing attack. You only signed Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders to be your running backs. You spent a 5th round pick on Jaden Blue, which doesn't inspire any confidence in anybody. Now you've got whole contract issues and just flat out player fallout issues with Micah Parsons. Like, this team is going to be throwing the ball under Brian Schottenheimer. Let's get it through our skulls now and accept it, because who I have now said multiple times was the first coach to let Russ cook. We're just going to open up the entire passing game for Dak Prescott this year. 6 fully healthy seasons. Dak's never finished lower than the quarterback 11 overall. If he's going to be chucking the ball all around the yard this year, I don't want to say Dak Prescott can get to Joe Burrow levels of last year, because what Joe Burrow did last year was truly, truly special. But if you're looking for that guy who's like, I don't know, he's not the rushing guy, but he could toss 38 to 40 touchdowns this year, give you over 4,500 passing yards. Like, hello, that's screaming Dak Prescott to me.
For sure. Ty, what kind of year is it this year?
I believe it's an odd numbered year.
Yes, it is. On your merchant, baby. Let's go.
He's the Minnesota Lynx of fantasy football.
Yes, he is. Why does he
the 2010 San Francisco Giants of fantasy football?
Hey,
he is quarterback 3 in 2023, quarterback 7 in 2021, quarterback 2 in 2019, and then of course 2017 kind of ruined it, but he's only quarterback 11. But yeah, I mean, you talk about a guy who is constantly undervalued and constantly brings good upside. It's Dak Prescott. And when you have CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, I don't really care who the coach is, right? I don't care who the staff is. He's going to throw the ball. He's going to put up points.
Ty, closing thoughts on Dak?
Just stay healthy. That's literally what it comes down to. If he's healthy, he's going to return value.
That's 100% what it comes down to. And if you want to have a healthy fantasy football draft this year, that was a terrible segue. You can check out our 2025 fantasy football draft guide, fellasdraftguide.com. Our full statted out projections on over 290 players, full team profiles highlighting offensive system, changes in coaches, stats that go into our research for this season, all that and more. fellasdraftguide.com. You can go check that out as well. Again, help us get to 5K subs. We would so appreciate if you join us on our ride. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell as well. If you want even more exclusive content over on our shorts feeds, Fantasy Football Fellas on Facebook and Twitter, or Facebook and TikTok, FFL is over on Twitter. The FFL is over on Instagram. And if you want to stick over on YouTube, Fantasy Football Fellas Shorts as well. I just got a DM from somebody who I DM'd like a week ago, and I'm just saw they replied, so I got a little bit thrown out of out of proportion there. So I was doing the
right. Blame it on the DM and not just
owning up to it. I know I'm just fumbling my bag here at the end of the episode. You can follow our personal socials though if you want more entertaining content. I'm at Lucas Wenzel on X, Camlaw FFF for Cameron, Tyler _Plath for Ty. We'll be back tomorrow. 7 running backs your league mates are drafting completely wrong. Thursday, we'll be back with the antithesis of this episode. League losing downside, potential landmines you could be stepping on in your drafts this year. Another favorite episode of ours this offseason. We will see you all then. Appreciate you all. Deuces.